Okay, so today we're talking about multi-step transformations. It's nothing new. It's just taking what we know and adding more steps to it. So um, let's look at a few examples here and see what comes out of it. In this first example, we're given 3 points, A, B, and C. And then we're told to reflect over the x-axis and then rotate 180 degrees about the origin. Okay, so what you've kind of got to do is you've got to kind of do one piece at a time to get to your final prime. Um, if you want to see the axis, remember that the x-axis is the right and left axis, and the y-axis is the up and down axis. All right, so whatever this shape is that they want us to reflect over, um, whatever the shape is, looks like a triangle. They want us to reflect over this x-axis. So wherever this triangle is, let's just assume, let's just go ahead and plot it actually. In this case, we'll put some tick marks here. So if we're plotting our original point, our first point A is at the point 2, 1. So we've got to come over 2 and up 1. So here's A. B is at 2, negative 3. So we come right 2 and down 3. And then, so here's A, here's B. And then C is at 4, negative 3. So we come over 1, 2, 3, 4. And then negative 3 down here. So this is our shape. And basically what they're telling us is we're going to take this shape and we're going to flip it over the x-axis first. If you recall, when we flip over the x-axis, notice the only points that are changing, or the only coordinate that is changing is the y-coordinate, right? The x positions are going to stay the same. So when we go to flip this thing, the x coordinates will stay the same, but the y coordinates are going to be exactly the opposite. Or if you remember how we reflected before, we counted back to the axis. So in this case, from C back to X, we have to go 1, 2, 3 to get back to the x-axis. So when we're reflecting, we have to move away that exact same distance. So a new point is going to be at 1, 2, 3 up here at positive 3. So this would be our new C prime. And notice all that changed. The x coordinate was still 4. So our C prime here for reflect, our C prime, the 4, positive 3. So if you look at that, what actually happened was the x coordinate stayed the same, but the y coordinate changed its sign. So all we have to do, we don't really even have to use the graph anymore, is we just keep the x coordinate the same. So that x coordinate is going to stay 2. And when it reflects, it's going to change the coordinate of the y. So instead of a negative 3, we'll have a positive 3. So for our A prime, our x coordinate will stay the same. Y coordinate will become negative. So 2, negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. That's what happens when we reflect it. All right. So we've done our reflection, and now we have to do the 180 degree rotation, and that's in your notes. But just to show you, I've got it written here on a piece of paper. If we're going to do 180 degrees, it's negative x and negative y. So basically, our final A prime is basically change the sign on the x, so that's changing that to a negative 2. And then change the sign on the y, which makes that a positive 1. Our new B prime, change the sign on that first one, that's negative 2. Change the sign on the second one, that's negative 3. And then our C prime, change the sign on the x, negative 4. And change the sign on the y coordinate, which is negative 3. So this is our newly rotated image, and if you wanted to, you could plot it on the coordinates, which I'm not going to do. All we wanted was the coordinates for A prime, B prime, and C prime. Okay? So what I want you to do is take a second and look at the second example, pause the video, and try this one on your own, see what you come up with. Okay. So in this example, we're told to reflect over the y-axis and then rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. All right. And we're given our 3 points again, and it looks like it's the same 3 points, and it is. All right. So if you look down here, this is our original points here plotted. So these are the same points. Instead of rotating about the x like we did before, they want us to take and rotate this about the y. Or we're going to reflect it over that y-axis. So the same deal sort of applies here. If we want to go from this a coordinate and do a reflection over the y-axis, we have to count back to the y-axis, 2, and then count away 2 there. So this would be our new a prime for this example. Notice what happens here is our x is what changed. This is now -2, 1. Our y-coordinate stayed the same. Our x is what changed. So when you reflect over the y-axis, so for the reflect part, we'll put a little r here. Our new a prime is -2, 1. Change the sign on the first one, leave the second one the same. In b prime, we're going to change the sign on the first one, -2, leave the second one the same, -3. And then finally, our c prime, change the sign on the first one, leave the second one the same. So that's for our reflection. But now we have to do a rotation, and that's 90 degrees counterclockwise. If you want to see what happens then is basically we want to take our points, flip them, and change the sign on the first one. So our final a prime, we're going to take this point and flip it and change the sign on the y coordinate. So that's going to become -1, -2. We're going to take this for b prime. We're going to take them and flip them and then change the sign on the first one. So that's going to become a +3, and the -2 stays the same. And then our c prime, we're going to change this to a positive. So that's going to become +3, and it's going to become the first coordinate. And then our x coordinate stays the same and becomes the y coordinate. So this is our newly reflected and rotated image for this particular problem. If you have any questions, bring them to class.